I'm driving a 2020 Toyota Corolla, and I can't think of a better activity for a Corolla than a tedious commute. Would you like to join me for my tedious commute to work? Cool. Let's give that formatized approach to Micah Drives another go as I needlessly floor it. That sound is indicative of the fact that the 2020 Toyota Corolla is a sportier version of the Corolla, which that's not saying a lot. If you've ever driven a Toyota Corolla, maybe as a rental car, maybe when you were commuting to school as a high schooler, or I don't know, nothing like cool. It's not like you had any like major adventures in a Toyota Corolla. It's just basic transportation, and Toyota's always made a Corolla that's, I'll say, pretty sedate. Well, that's all changed. This is an emotional Toyota Corolla. Let's start with how it drives. A little light weaving while driving down a straight road, thus freaking out people around me, is a good start to the Toyota Corolla experience. The steering ratio is fairly quick. As you add steering angle, the car turns like it wants to turn. That's not a Corolla trait. So at some point in the not too distant future, I'm going to find a corner, and then I'm going to exploit some of the Corolla's handling attributes, and we'll see how it fares. In fact, let's build up to this. I got a U-turn, and then we're gonna have a sweet, sweeping right-hander that'll lead onto the freeway. While we're doing this, as I come to a stop, the brake pedal is very soft, and the brakes are kind of grabby. So it's hard to come smoothly to a stop without a really delicate braking foot. Luckily, I have a very delicate braking foot. Delicate's not the right word. Sensitive? Oh crap, I'm almost out of gas. Well, that's a good segue into fuel economy. This is the 2-liter engine that comes on higher trims, 31 mpg in the city, 38 on the highway. Even at 38 mpg, I don't think I'm going to make it to work. Oh, look, there's one of the boring Toyota Corollas. There it is. That's when they started to try and make the Corolla a little more interesting, and it was a move in the right direction. But maybe the wisdom in Toyota's Corolla development is that they have moved slowly towards being cool. You don't want to just show up at work one day with a mohawk. That might be jarring. Oh, man. So my cool right-hand sweeper is being paced because it's rush hour traffic, so I don't get to fling this in here. And wouldn't you know it, there's another Toyota Corolla right in front of me. That's what's weird about the Toyota Corolla, which I'm really getting tired of saying Toyota Corolla. Are you kidding me? So there's a Corolla behind me, a Corolla in front of me. Am I going to the Corolla International Drivers Meeting? Like, oh yeah, you know, they gather twice a year. Yeah, and it's right on your way to work too, Micah, so yeah, no, you'll fit in perfectly. Okay, that's the point I was going to make about Corollas, is that Toyota honestly did not need to do anything with the Corolla to make it more popular. It was already pretty darn popular if the sample size of the vehicle in front and behind me are any indication. And yet, thinking long term, they decided to add a little bit of flair. That 2-liter engine under the hood is putting out 169 horsepower, reasonable thrust as I got on the freeway, but the more interesting aspect is the continuously variable transmission. So there's a sport model where you can get a manual transmission, but everything else, and I think also on the very, very lowest trim you can get a manual, but basically the entire Corolla range uses a continuously variable transmission. It's got a launch gear, so when you leave from a stop, it feels more like a normal automatic transmission. So you don't have that immediate kind of like lull, then flare to high groaning revs that you normally experience with the CVT. The way the CVT is implemented on the Corolla, in large part, it feels like it's just trying to cover over the things that people hate about CVTs, and it does a pretty good job of that. The way they've gotten around some of the unpleasant parts of that behavior, the stuff people don't like, the engine noise, and actually that is a pretty spot-on impression. The way they've gotten around that is to emulate normal automatic transmission gear changes. So if you floor it, you'll hear the revs rise kind of near the red line, and then it'll drop back down again. So I always wonder, how much of that automatic transmission behavior can you emulate before you compromise the efficiency advantages of a CVT? And if you do compromise the efficiency advantages of a CVT, why use a CVT? We might be going a little bit deep down the CVT rabbit hole. Maybe we'll move on. Cruising along at a steady state 60 miles per hour on a slightly bumpy freeway, I will note that ride quality is great. Over big bumps, over like choppy pavement, it just feels good. I think part of that is due to the independent rear suspension, which also yields benefits when cornering. I didn't get my sweet sweeping right-hand on-ramp. That's a little bit of a disappointment. Maybe I'll find another opportunity. Perhaps when I have to get off the freeway in 3 seconds to fill this thing up because I'm going to run out of gas. You know what? That is going to be my silver lining for this drive. Needing to stop to get gas will give me an opportunity to see how this thing handles. I know Toyota also worked to make the Corolla quieter. It's hard because when you get into a car without a comparison to other vehicles, like a back-to-back comparison, it's really hard to know how it stacks up. I mean, I'm still hearing a fair bit of wind and road noise. So I would really need to, although you know what, as I'm recalling, I remember the last time I did a Corolla review, I think it was loud. So this might be an improvement in the land of Corollas, but the real test would be in a competitive set. Dropping right out of a Honda Civic into a Corolla, but I didn't do that. So we'll just say it's better than the old Corolla. Visibility out is good. Over my right shoulder, the rear seat backs come up fairly high, so it would be possible for a shorter car to occupy my blind spot to kind of cheekily hide under there while I'm making a lane change. Blind spots monitoring is available though, so I've got a handy little monitor right there and over there. Glows orange quite intuitively when there's a car in my blind spot. Just checking to make sure the camera's still there. Also, a little bit of a windblown look really works great on YouTube. While maintaining pace with the rest of this freeway traffic on LA, which is fairly swift. You know what I need to start doing? I need to start taping over the speedometer so there's no evidence of my potentially illegal. I wouldn't drive illegal. I wouldn't do anything dangerous. Let's just say I'm driving at a reasonably quick pace and notice all the cars passing me. The point being that at higher speeds, especially on freeways that have little grooves etched in them like this, I've noticed a little tendency to wander back and forth. And then as I'm coming around this corner, the quick steering ratio that I like at lower speeds, it makes it feel just maybe a little less stable than I'd like. It's not problematic, it's kind of like the brakes. Oh, I was a little too close. Okay, so I got a warning from the lane departure warning system, and this is one of the reasons why sometimes I will turn it off. When I drive on the streets, I drive a little like I would drive on a racetrack, which is I try to clip the apex and then I track out, making as long and smooth a line as possible when going around corners. And when I do that, oftentimes the lane keeping assist and the lane departure warning system will beep and then correct my behavior, and I don't like to be questioned by the car. I'm tempted to turn that off. Though that is a great segue into the fact that the Corolla includes standard across the entire lineup Toyota Safety Sense 2.0, which bundles all the safety equipment that you'd want, especially in a compact car. So lane keeping assist. So when I depart here, watch. The car's steering itself back into the lane, and notice it doesn't bounce me back across, it just brings me back to center. I really like how it behaves. And then also, let's try the dynamic cruise. It's set for 65 miles per hour. I'm following it's a Ford Transit. It's white, but it has windows, so I'm gonna give that one a pass. It's probably not a murder van, though really in a pinch, any van can be a murder van. The Corolla system, at least if you get the CVT, will bring the vehicle to a complete stop, which is cool. That's more than the Honda Passport can do. Like when you're driving a Honda Passport below, was it like 20, 25 miles an hour? It just shuts off. That's off-putting. In this case, the Corolla should bring itself to a complete stop, which hopefully we'll get an opportunity to do here, but traffic is somewhat lighter than I would expect. I have the distance set to the shortest possible, and there's a big enough gap here, especially with California drivers, that they could exploit that gap and slot right in. Following a Dodge Caliber. You remember the Dodge Caliber? They had that SRT4 version. Yeah, that didn't work. I always note that it's wise not to complain because somebody somewhere always has it worse than you. So I'm not going to complain about my commute. I'm going to note that at times it can be terrible. Depending on traffic in LA, it can be semi-hellacious. Tell me about your commute. How is your commute worse than mine? I bet it is. I bet you have a part of your commute or some aspect that makes it worse. Tell us in the comment section. Oh yeah, and then we've got all this construction and stuff happening too, so that makes it a little bit worse. But again, not complaining. And why would I? I'm commuting, but I'm also making a video. This is working out great for me. While I've been talking about commutes and other ancillary things, the dynamic cruise control has been doing a great job. Just maintain distance. Oh, here we go. We're gonna come to a complete stop. My foot is covering the brake just in case everything goes wonky. Aww. I'm probably the only guy on this entire freeway who's hoping that the traffic comes to a complete stop. I have faith it will. And I have noticed that the Corolla is somewhat disinclined to get after it acceleration-wise when the car ahead departs. So if somebody leaves with real gusto, the Corolla will kind of lazily lope along, casually trying to catch up, but creating a big distance again. And as cars pile up behind you, you know you've made some enemies. All right, I'm going to stop talking about the driving part. Oh, this is interesting. Let's see what happens. Okay, I had to intervene there. There's a car, this Honda CR-V, slowly merging. Oh! Ooh! BMW 7 Series, sliding around the right side. We should be zipping together, merging as humans ought, but the BMW, giving BMW drivers a bad name, just going around the right side, avoiding that entire thing. Let's talk about the interior. Interior quality in the Toyota Corolla is shockingly good. It's better than it needs to be. I noted that when I did my Kelley Blue Book review with the Toyota Corolla hatchback, which I like a lot. That blue flame paint and the whole aesthetic, whew, that is nice. But in this sedan context, it is similarly great, especially on the higher trims. So this is the XSE trim, and note this like blue stitching and soft materials. The touch points are great. Not all great. That's some awfully hard plastic under there. Oh yes, the fuel level is low. Would I like to search for nearby gas stations? No, let's gamble with it a little bit. You might think the armrest would get a big thumbs down from me. I'm going to try and dial back how many dumb mouth noises I make when talking about the car, but in that case, I think it kind of worked. But look, slides forward, so if I want, I can rest my elbows. Yeah, this could be a little more padded, but I do like the positioning and height. I also think if the steering wheel came back just a little bit more, I would be in driving position heaven. Oh yeah, and as the XSE, this has a power driver's seat with lumbar support, and it's that really, if you need to dial in aggressive lumbar support for your lower back, it'll do that. Oh, that is nice. There's a clean simplicity to the interior that I really like. It's not making any big swings, it's not too swoopy, but it clearly is asserting some kind of style, and I dig that. I do think some people will be put off by the infotainment setup. It sits up here like an obelisk, and I don't know, it doesn't really bother me, but some people dislike the non-integrated infotainment display trend that we're seeing, where it kind of looks like a separate unit is just sort of plopped on there. But there's some good reasons to do that. So let's say you introduce the 2020 Toyota Corolla, and that body style has to last for, what, like 6 years or something like that? Sometime around year 4, when screen sizes have gotten so obscenely huge that the 8-inch unit that comes in this XSE is no longer adequate, it'll be a lot easier for them to make that screen bigger, extending out this way, because it's not built into the dash, which that gives them some design flexibility. And from that perspective, I'm fine. I also like the fact that it sits up high. So staring at the back of this Kia Soul, it's just a quick doot, 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 to see what's on the screen. Speaking of what's on the screen, Apple CarPlay is on the screen. So as an Apple guy, that makes me happy. You cannot get Android Auto, which is annoying. Ooh, camouflaged car. Wonder what that was. Kind of looked like a Hyundai Ioniq based on rear hatch design. But you couldn't see it on camera, so it's not worth addressing. Yeah, so no Android Auto yet. Maybe Toyota will come to their senses and provide that for you. One of the things I really do like about the interface, though, is the integration of physical buttons. So you've got a home, menu, audio. You can pull up sub-menus using these physical buttons, which is nice because if those are frequently used, you can get to where you need to get to without smudging up the screen. In operation, the screen is not as quick reacting as I would like. And I think if you look at the interface too, it looks a little bit dated, which isn't a great attribute for a first-year vehicle. Like, this stuff has to last for a little while. So, you know what it is I just got out of the Mazda 3, and there are some aspects of that vehicle that I found a little disappointing, mostly, dynamic abilities. But the interface for the infotainment screen looks super modern. It looks really hip. Whether that'll age well or this sort of, I don't know, Garmin 2014 vibe will endure, that remains to be seen. Operational lag and aesthetic aside, this is a pretty good system. It's got all the things you would want if you were buying a car. I think that's what blows me away about the Toyota Corolla is that there's such a strong value component, largely in the form of all that safety equipment. I really like that stuff just comes standard. And honestly, that's the kind of stuff that you would want in your vehicle, because you know how sometimes when you look back on what society did, in like the 50s and the 60s, or even like a decade or two ago, it's like, wow, we thought that was a good idea. There is going to be a moment in the not too distant future, perhaps after you've bought your car, and then maybe when you're trying to sell your 2020 Corolla sometime in 2025 or 2026, where the idea of having a car that doesn't include automatic emergency braking will seem awfully silly. Like, wait, you drove cars where if you didn't push the brake, you would just crash into the thing in front of you? How did you guys do that? With that in mind, just from a resale value perspective, it sure would make a lot of sense to get a car with some of those advanced safety features. So when you get the Corolla, all that stuff is just included. As the fanciest XSE trim too, there's also wireless phone charging up there, just past the seat heater buttons. The place for placing your phone is a little bit shallow, and I've noticed that the USB port that's just to the right of it, I like the placement. That's a good place to put all that stuff, but there's nowhere for the wire to collect. So you just have a bunch of, like phone cable just sort of dangling there. You can kind of smush it up near the phone, but it's a little inelegant. It's a pretty good sign, though, that I'm driving a Toyota Corolla, their compact sedan, and I'm complaining about being a little inelegant. Yes, this will be my off-ramp. All right. There is also a sport mode, I'll mention real quick, for the CVT, and to me, it just adds jerkiness. I'll leave sport mode on and see what happens as I go through this corner. Right, let's do this thing. See, quick reactions. Oh, yeah. Clipping the apex. The car's warning me not to. That wasn't as fulfilling as it should have been because I couldn't throw quite enough speed at it. What I can tell you from experience is that the Toyota Corolla, it pushes at the limit. Standard, generic, auto-journalistic cliche, but it's true. I always like when people throw that out as a complaint, because for passenger cars, understeer is why you don't die. Right? Oh, look, there's that camoed car. Let's get nice up and close to it and see if we can identify. Let's see, based on the hatch. Yep, raised hatch, but it's got a divided part at the top there. Yeah, that kind of looks like an Ioniq to me. It's always hard to tell. The camo's doing its job. Ooh, the most important question, though, while I'm waiting here at the stoplight, did I feel a human emotion while driving the Toyota Corolla? Yeah, I think I did. It has to be viewed through the context of a sensible compact sedan, but yeah, if previous Corollas had no soul, this has a bit of soul. Like this one would get up and it would do a little karaoke if you prodded it. All right, U-turn. I mean, even just doing that U-turn, you can feel that the steering feel has been tuned for some level of emotion. Obviously, nobody cares about steering feel, but for me, it matters. What the hell's that? I think there's water dropping on the Okay, yeah, there's water dropping on the car. That's weird. As water slowly accumulates on the roof, I will mention that the back seat is a little bit tight where headroom is concerned. Before you ask, I say this all the time, but I'm 5'10" with a long torso, so headroom tends to be more of an issue for me than it would be for most people. My knees clear with this seat set for my position, but yeah, the back seat is a little bit tight where headroom is concerned. Your mileage may vary. It's not good to mix metaphors when talking about cars because it sounds like I'm talking about mileage. I just mean like if you're shorter, you'll probably fit back there just fine. I do know that one of the things I don't like is when the center armrest, when you pull it down, if it just goes, it doesn't, oh, there's that sound again. It doesn't just flop, but it doesn't rest on an internal catch. So I like when it sort of sits out in a proper position instead of just sort of like resting on the seat bottom. It just seems like a little bit of extra care went into the armrest when they do that, so I'm a stickler. And quickly, while I'm sitting here doing nothing, what do you think about the exterior? So this is the XSE. It's a little bit sportier. I'm not blown away by, if you go to the rear bumper, there's a plastic inset that looks really plasticky. I think what it does is it kind of breaks up the verticality of the vehicle. So by having that strong, dark, horizontal component, it makes the Corolla look a little bit lower. Which I don't know if it needs that because it is physically lower and wider than the previous Corolla. But it's got a little bit of a sporty sense to it. Do you like the Corolla? What do you think? Take a look. Last weird observation, for flipping the seats down to expand trunk space, the releases are inside the car, which I don't like. I kind of prefer to have them in the trunk because if somebody breaks into your car, then they can also get into your trunk. And they're inboard of the headrest too, which is sort of a weird place to position them. You push them down, they're buttons, and then the seats will come down that way. So I wish there were seat releases. I wish they were in the trunk, which would be more convenient and also more secure. All right, I'm gonna gas up, then I'll come back and synopsize. I have to pull the fuel lever here. Yeah. Synopsizing the 2020 Toyota Corolla. I've been doing this job for a long time now, and I've never liked the Toyota Corolla. It's always felt so boring to me, and I would say this is the least boring Corolla. In fact, that sounds like faint praise. I would say this is the most interesting Toyota Corolla I've driven yet. Well, actually, that's not true. That honor goes to the Corolla hatchback. But you know how earlier I said you don't want to just show up one day at work with a mohawk because it feels like too aggressive a change? In the slow transition from boring and responsible Corolla to fun-loving, good time having, a little outrageous Corolla, this is the leather jacket transition. Hey, it hasn't gone full Fonzie yet. And now to burn down my life with a little more commuting. Shut up, Corolla. Oh, thank God. I finally get my right hand sweeping corner. She pushes at the limit.